When Skeletor's sending out his soldiers, he knows who can lead the charge. Here's a look at the Mattel Master Universe Turtles of Grayskull Ram Man, mutated battering ram. Ram-Man did not hear his assailant's attack. It was as if the wind was suddenly choked out of him. He woke covered in ooze, and he opened his mouth to speak, only to hear a bah come out of his mouth. All he knew, he had a master, and his name was Krang. I wonder how many bags of wool this guy has. Before we find that out, it's probably not a good idea asking either. Let's grab the tape measure and see how tall the brand new Ram-Man is from the Turtles of Grayskull line. He's quite large. In fact, he's actually about 6 inches in height, or he's about 15 centimeters tall. FYI, here's what the figure looks like with the original Master Universe Origins Ram-Man. Mutation will do wonders when it comes to your size. Here's, speaking of things that are mutated, here's what the figure looks like with the first wave He-Man. Bringing over here a Master Universe Turtles version. Here's Leonardo. And a couple of figures we just recently looked at. We looked at Shredder, wanted to bring him in as well. And one of his former colleagues, until, of course, things get fixed. Here's what the figure looks like with the Master Universe Man-at-Arms. We get some stuff over here. We get some stuff over here. Let's start first with the stuff that's over here. First, the figure comes included with this little insert piece of paper that tells us just that Ram-Man has removable head, removable side arms, and you can also detach his lower half and his boots. Now, this whole time, of course, we always talk about these things. I have to really get around to showing you guys what these actually look like. So maybe in the course of this review, I'll pop off a few things. Almost looked for a second like I was milking a cow. Gonna pop off maybe a few things from Ram-Man. We'll maybe mix things around. Just, obviously the paper's there. We might as well do something with it. It will, for right now, drop into the recycling bin. Oh, that fell in perfectly. To come also included with this, I recognize you, is the same mini comic that came also included with Shredder. Belly of the Beast Man. Man is actually put in brackets here. Speaking of Beast Man, he is actually in the top far left corner. The top far right corner is the Ram-Man that we're about to have a look at. And then we also have the 4 Turtle Brothers with Teela there in the center. And then off to the side, it looks like there's Merman. I can't wait for that Merman. And I can't wait for the Skeletor that, based on this, looks really interesting. I mean, if you also like the look of Skeletor, I think you believe also makes an appearance somewhere down. Yeah, this is just the way the regular Skeletor would look down below. He's aligning forces right now with Krang. There's Shredder off to the far side. And off to now the next page, you see the mutated He-Man. I know we've already covered off the territory when we looked at Shredder. Just quickly show you guys what, again, that looks like. There's Skeletor off to the side. He looks a little like Skeletor from the New Adventures of He-Man. Maybe that's why I like the Skeletor look so much. And then it just quickly again. All of these actually now have dialogue bubbles, so at least I can follow along and see what's going on here. I have to also draw your attention to, which I didn't draw your attention to in earlier when we looked at Shredder, that it looks to be a Roboto version of Metalhead. That is very, very cool. I do like the way that they're choosing their characters, that this looks like a natural combination really to be an amalgamation of 2 characters, Roboto and Metalhead. I think the idea of having those 2 characters put together like that, really interesting. You can also see as well, there's a little tease there for what seems to be, I don't know if that's Slash in the back corner. There looks to be a turtle that's got multiple arms. I can't quite tell who that's supposed to be. It doesn't, maybe it isn't even one of the turtles. But down below, it also looks to be like Merman, but it looks like Merman's almost got like a serpent tail. Very interesting stuff coming our ways. Can't wait to see what we got. On the back, though, a little bit of an advertisement, obviously, for upcoming videos. We still have yet to look at Raphael and Beastman. Definitely looking forward to popping those guys out. We'll be looking at those in upcoming reviews. So let's move the mini comic out of the way. And then let's move on now to the territory of accessories. The figure comes included with 2 variations of his axe. The other Ram-Man also came included with this axe. I think also at one point we did get this variation of axe as well. The idea that you can take both axes and combine them together. Oh, that's right. He was a deluxe figure, so he actually came with both. You can merge the 2 together. I don't really know exactly what you would do. I mean, I guess if you wanted to mix big giant cookie batters together, but you can also have him wielding them together or obviously separate the 2. Now, he has one hand that's a little bit more closer of a grip. See, it's only got just a little eye hole behind it. This is better for using this axe because you're just basically going to wedge it in between his hand like that. It fits really easily. This hand, being that has more of a gripping hand, you have to either heat this up a little bit with hot water, or you can also take the handle end of things and sort of just wedge it in between his thumb that way, and then just bring the axe around, just kind of like that. So the figure can actually have the means to wield both weapons. I like the look of that quite a lot. Now again, you can just detach these, and on the back, the figure does also have a storage space to store his axe. He stores this axe, although he doesn't store this one. What you could do, though, is you can take the top half of this, take the bottom half of this, meet them somewhere in the middle, so at least he has the means to store both of them without obviously trying to fight both of them into the top there. So there's a little bit of storage space there as well. I will say, though, unfortunately, with my Ram Man, is that he is loose. He isn't as much loose in the torso, but he's loose here in the ankles, and that shouldn't really be the case for a figure I just immediately took out of the packaging. I've had this guy maybe out of the packaging for, maybe 45 minutes or so, and he's already loose in the ankles. So he was already loose taking him out of the packaging, and I'm really disappointed by that, because he's got a lot of mass weight on the top here. You really want to have things like ankles be the thing that kind of keeps a figure from falling over. While he isn't going to be falling over just yet, it seems to be there's a making of it, because unfortunately, just this one ankle's loose on my figure. Now, what you can do, looking at the instructions from before, if you wanted to detach these, some of the parts actually can be removable. So if you don't really like the lower skirt, I don't know why you would want to really detach that, but you could mix and match the parts if you wanted to. So like, let's say, let's grab Skeletor here first. Now I'm just grabbing Skeletor. I don't know why. Skeletors seem to make the most sense. I thought, well, let's be silly. Skeletor with the bottom half of Ram Man. I mean, that's pretty ridiculous. And again, like, you can just mix and match the parts, just pop those off, replace them. You want to see that? Okay. Just detach Ram Man's arms. Do this with Skeletor here. Poor Skeletor, unfortunately, like, he's not the one that's getting mutated. And yet, again, you can just take like the arms and mix and match them if you wanted to. So the paper is right. I mean, I just don't think it's a waste of time and a waste of materials, really, just to tell us this on paper. But it's also for me to show you guys that the paper is right. If you wanted to, you can mix and match the parts. Just put Ram Man back together, though. Put his arm back in place also. So his head sculpt, if I can get his arm back in there, his head sculpt is really nice. The idea of taking his namesake, Ram Man, and literally turning him into a ram was clever on Mattel's part. I also like he's got himself this little chin beard. Now, again, I'm not sure how that necessarily changes the way he originally looked, because, again, like, mutating him, unless they gave him brand new suits, you would think that maybe, like, the mutagen is probably changing their armors as well, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I do like that they went the direction that they went with He-Man. So instead of giving him kind of more of an opaque plastic, the plastic on both He-Man and Ram Man are kind of a little more of a gummier translucency. Not to the point where, I suppose if you had a light source, you probably could shine straight through for Ram Man. But the fact that they actually are using sort of more of a gummier kind of rubbery material for this. He also has like the veins there in his arms, like similar to what He-Man would have. He also has it there in his neck as well. Although maybe it isn't the extreme of what we got with He-Man. Boy, it's a nice looking Ram Man though. Large spikes there for the shoulders on the sides. It doesn't seem to limit at all the articulation that we'll talk more about in a moment. But by far my favorite thing about this guy is the fact that they literally just took big giant horns and they have them sticking out the side. He apparently also stopped for a second, decided to give himself a piercing, as he has it there on the top of his ear as well, for reasons unknown. But a really nice looking figure head sculpt though. Even if you really weren't on the fence, or even if you were on the fence of really getting like the Turtles of Grayskull figures, I mean, I really think, honestly, the thing that's really making me the most excited from this is the stuff that we're getting from the Masters. Like, I know I already had said that when we looked at the He-Man, and even like Man-at-Arms was really a nice looking figure, but Ram Man is just doing things for me. I really like the designing of him. I mean, obviously his suit stays pretty consistent with the original Ram Man suit. It's just a little bit different. What's interesting though is if you look at the front belt buckle on Ram Man, he would have had just originally a skull. They have now swapped the skull out for a ram skull that has the little horns there on the top. A really nice little nod of detail there as well. Some nice painted in parts. You've got the little civil rivets down below there as well. The black is nicely done there too. And it looks to be that you could also remove and detach his armor. It just basically was strapped on either side. And underneath that, you probably would just have a very large body. Not one of a body that we would normally have gotten with other Masters figures. So they are using a little bit bigger of a build. I'm probably sure that they're going to be using this build for a future figure. Now, the thing about really I like about this figure is not only just the way he's big and bulky like this, but he's got a lot of weighted plastic to him. He doesn't feel like a super light figure, which is, again, one of the unfortunate things about him, because he feels heavier. I also feel like there's going to be a little bit more issues with his ankles because, again, like, yeah, man, boy, that stinks. Look how loose these ankles are. I mean, it may not look loose to you because you're only literally watching the video of this, but just see the ease that I have of just hinging those ankles. It should not be as easy as that. So I just worry that though long term, if that's going to be able to hold his weight and continue to hold his weight, because I really wouldn't want to have Ram Man come down one day and find Ram Man has fallen onto the floor. For the figure's articulation though, his head's going to be on a ball joint, so it does rotate, I would say normally all the way around, because he does have the higher kind of collar piece here for the top of his shoulder armor. It does kind of get in the way of things for his little chin beard to be able to rotate all the way around. Head looks up about that high, and it also looks down, but obviously it's not going to look down all the way because he's got the chin beard. It does also rock back and forth as well. Look at the eyes. Look at the sculpted in eyes and the way they painted those red. Nice looking figure. Arms do hinge outward. I mean, you can easily bring those at 90 degrees. The arms go forward and back. Obviously, you're not going to be able to rotate them all the way around just because he's got the big shoulder piece that gets in the way of things. The figure, though, has a swivel in his arm. Not in his bicep. His bicep is actually one piece. It's a continuation for his shoulder. He does have a swivel here at his elbow area, which also allows the forearm to rotate back and forth and bend right there. He has the hand that rotates also all the way around. There's a hinge on the hand. Also, you can hinge those back and forth. Swivel the waist, which is already unfortunately loose for Ram Man. His legs do split out. He doesn't have the gimmick, by the way. If that was one of the things that you guys probably would be asking is, can you actually push down his legs? Well, no, unfortunately you can't. The figure does have a split. He has the ball joints on the inside cavities of both legs, both thighs. You can move the legs forward and back just only by a little bit, even though this is really softer plastic. Not soft enough really that gives him a lot of mobility, but there's just enough that you can move the legs back and forth. Now, unfortunately, the way they've designed his lower legs, so there's a swivel right here. I don't really even think that it needed to be there anyways, but there's a swivel right there underneath basically this part of his armor. Then he has a hinge joint right here, but the hinge joint only goes so far. I don't know if you can actually see this. Let me just bring it back just a little bit. See how much of a hinge there's afforded on the back of the figure's legs. There's not a lot. There's only enough just to kind of get the leg to do that. But again, like the biggest thing for me, the big heartbreak, unfortunately, for Ram Man is already the overly loose ankles. And it shouldn't, again, be the case that this isn't a figure I can't imagine it has been used before. It obviously hasn't been used before. This is a brand new tool. So it isn't a case where there's mold degradation, where like after a while, if they keep continuing to use the mold over and over again, that it starts to develop looseness in certain aspects. This is a figure that's probably using a completely unique mold, so it shouldn't have overly loose ankles. I'm going to see if maybe I can actually pop these off. I'm sure I can easily pop these off and maybe add something in there to probably tighten up the joints. Because again, like he's too good of a figure. He's too fun of a figure to really have the worry of him falling over time. He stands okay right now, but I hope that that's not going to be something that's going to progressively worsen. What am I kidding? It's going to progressively worsen. Most of these Masters figures usually tend to develop looseness in their ankles or looseness in their knees. Ram Man, just because he has so much additional plastic weight from the waist up, I just worry again, like that's going to cause some stress issues when it's going to come to those ankles. And again, just to show where we originally came from, here's the original Ram Man, which again had the little gimmick. I didn't really get the chance to show you guys what the original gimmick was, but did do a review of this guy like years ago. I always liked Ram Man because Ram Man was like one of the first Masters figures I think I remember picking up as a kid. Very limited in articulation. The guy really heavily relied on his gimmick. But even though like this guy doesn't have a gimmick, the fact that his gimmick would be his name and they literally have just mutated him into a Ram Man monster is a really fun touch on Mattel's part. It's just a shame, unfortunately, though, by giving a big bulky build like this, he has to unfortunately have loose ankles, because that's not something that you really want to have to experience for a figure that you just immediately take out of the packaging. That other character I was seeing inside the comic that I thought was a turtle with long legs, I think it's actually Web Store. So it seems to be like Skeletor is not just mutating any Masters that he's stealing, but he's also mutating his own men. Usually Mattel always finds this as a way to tease future characters. They do that a lot of times with the artwork that you see on the back of their packaging. So if that's any indication from what we're kind of seeing in these little glimpses in the comic panels is what we're getting with future figures, pretty excited to see what they have in store for us Master Universe collectors, especially that merman. That merman's going to be very interesting if they can find a way to kind of give him a serpent tail. Going, though, back to Ram Man. Ram Man's an interesting looking character. I just wish, unfortunately, he didn't have, the plaguing problems of loose ankles. I've got him wielding right now the double-sided axe. It's basically just the two axes that you can attach together. I think they'd be too big for him to wield in the regular Ram Man body. But this oversized Ram Man, it seems to fit perfectly fine with his size. The figure has some really interesting translucent purple plastic. Not translucent to the point where you could actually, run your hand behind and be able to see straight through it. But it sort of has a different type of plastic that they're using for unlike regular Master Universe. Unfortunately, though, because he has so much more weighted plastic, the problem of having loose ankles becomes ever more apparent. He really shouldn't have, and I know I already said this during the review and wrapping up the review, but he shouldn't have loose ankles already out the gate. I could see if I had this figure for a while and I was picking him off the shelf and moving things around. That happens time to time. I go back to my shelf of Masters figures, I take the figure off the shelf, kind of moving them around, and so figures occasionally do develop looseness in ankles, occasionally do develop looseness in knees, but you shouldn't have to have the worry of that immediately getting a figure out of the packaging. Ram Man's even more of a worry because, again, there's more plastic weight at play here that I really don't want to have any worries of this guy being able to stand and support his own weight. He has the means at least to attach onto a display stand, but that's not going to fix his problems of ankles. I may even have to take his feet off and see if I can find a way to tighten up the joints. Maybe I can even use a little bit of floor polish. Have you guys had a chance to pick up Ram Man for yourself? I guess the bigger question is, if you have, do you also have loose ankles on your figures? Let's hope it's only just mine, and I just happen to have the luck of the draw. I hope it's not, though, across the board and everybody's got loose ankles on their Ram Man. But if you have picked up the figure, let me know down below in the comments section if any problems are there. If you guys, in the meantime, though, did enjoy this video, want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you're on board to see more, we are going to be, I think, probably looking at Beastman next, the undercover henchman. I don't really know exactly what that is. He's an undercover henchman. He's got furry red fur. I mean, everybody knows what Beastman looks like, whether he's wearing samurai armor or not. Anyways, I think we are going to probably be looking at him. And then, of course, sprinkled in there, we're always looking at other stuff here on this channel. The key is making sure that you're not missing out on anything at all that I'm posting on a regular basis. Hitting that subscribe button down below is always an important thing. Turning on the bell notification is also another important thing. And coming back on a regular basis is probably the most important thing, because there's always going to be new content coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.